Hello, everybody. This is Danny back from Deepsouth Homestead. I'm here with my really good friend, Mr. Bobby from Spags Unfiltered. And I have really come, this is crazy. I have really come to love your channel, man. When you put, with the hat you wear and the glasses and everything, when I see you come on, I told Wanda, I said, that's just like the coolest look to me whenever I see that. I said, it just looks so good. I said, people always talk about how that Porch Time is my thing over here on YouTube. That to me is your icon right there. It really does well, and I really love it. And I think that a lot of people out there is going to like it too. Once they get to more people find you and just get to figure out who you are and what you're all about. So today, guys, we've got Bobby with us, a very dear friend of mine. Uh, Bobby is into preparing and surviving I'm gonna say the coming apocalypse. I wanna I wanna talk with Bobby about some different scenarios, and guys, I want y'all to really pay attention as we do this because Bobby and I both live in two totally different parts of the country. We both live in two different types of settings. Now, I don't, in all fairness to Bobby, I have no clue of where he lives or how he lives. You know, so I'm going to leave that part of it up to him as far as how he describes what he would do during a particular situation. But I want to start off by Bobby, let you introduce yourself, introduce your channel, and then we'll go right into what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure, Danny. First off, thanks for having me. I've always enjoyed our conversations that we've had offline, and I always enjoy coming on to do online stuff with you. For those who haven't had the displeasure of meeting me yet, my name is Bobby Spags. Uh, my YouTube channel is Spags Unfiltered. There's also a website under production. I am a founding member of freesteading.com. I am one of the council members for the Midwest Preparedness Project. I used to be the vice president of Full Spectrum Preparedness and the Kansas Prepper Expo. And I currently am a private contractor that provides, consulting. Uh, what's the word? It was services to a whole bunch of places, including things like EMP Shield and some of the other more preparedness based companies in the United States. Um, I live in Kansas, so right smack dab in the middle of EMP territory and sort of kind of in Tornado Alley, even though I'm pretty certain that the weather has shifted over the past 5 years, and I think Tornado Alley has kind of moved more east. But we get plenty of inclement weather here, so Kansas is where I'm from, so we can know that right off the bat, so people know where my geography is when I answer some of your questions.
Oh, okay. So as we talked about before, you're at ground zero then,
Pretty much.
pretty much. And for those of you who don't know what that means, in the event there is a kind of like a pre-planned scenario of the United States that they would, in order to take out most of Canada and the United States and upper part of Mexico, they would detonate a nuke 300 miles above the center of the United States, which would technically be over the center of Kansas. So that's the reason when I say ground zero for Bobby, that's basically what we're talking about. For those of you who don't know what that is, but today, Bobby, you mentioned that you were you work behind the scenes for EMP Shield, and a lot of people don't understand what EMP Shield is, and of course, everything I have here is EMP protected, with the exception of one piece of equipment I have is not yet, but we will get there with it. Um, in the event of an EMP, which is an electromagnetic pulse, uh, which is created. Now, we have to understand there with the new technology out there, and I think Bobby will agree with this. With the new technology out there, EMP is not what it used to be. EMP now doesn't necessarily mean there has to be a nuke detonated 300 miles above the Earth's atmosphere, to do what they need to do. It can actually be pinpointed now. They have drones that fly around. They can do buildings. I mean, they have weapons now that can be pointed directly at things and they can EMP specific things now. I mean, from the inside stuff that I'm involved in, it I know things that you know that the normal person probably is not privy to as far as how they could attack us if they wanted to. They don't have to.
Sure.
They don't have to destroy a big area. I mean, they could take out one city, or they can take out one building, or they can take out one household. They can take out a whole nation. I mean, there's lots of different ways now. And to be honest with you guys, I'm just being completely honest here. EMP is probably the. I mean, it is a bad deal. Don't get me wrong, because it sent us back into the 1800s. But it's not the most feared weapon that we have to worry about right now. You know, it is a bad weapon, but it's not the most feared today. Uh, but Bobby, where you live at and where I live at is two totally different geographical regions of the country. We both have different weather types. We both have uh, different land types. We have totally different types of people. You know, there's different types of cities. I'm near a water port. You're way inland on the United States. Let's talk a little bit about an EMP. Uh, and from my standpoint, I'm down next to a Gulf Coast region down here. If we get an EMP that, say, takes out the whole country, which is the one that everybody, that's the one we're going to stick with because I think that's the one that everybody's most familiar with. The first thing that's going to happen down here in my region is that there's going to be a certain amount of people that's going to pass away instantly. You know, I mean, anyone who is on any type of machinery to keep them alive or anything to that nature. And I think that it's probably going to be pretty much the same where you're at if it happens. You're going to always have those people who are going to go first. And then you have those that have to be medically taken care of through refrigerated products and different types of stuff like this that would within a couple of days to the first week or so, then you'll lose that group of people. Uh, and then from that point forward, the I'm trying to make this sound as good as I can. Now, there's really not anything good that you can
There's
come out
no
of
doing
this.
that, man.
um,
Just get unfiltered.
just
It's
get
okay.
unfiltered. It's okay. Yeah. But well, anyway, you're gonna have those people that that have to deal with death and carnage. It's not used to dealing with death and carnage, and then from that, you're gonna have water systems that's not going to be functioning. People's going to get waterborne illnesses. Waterborne illnesses take out more people, than lots of other things ever did. And we got this, and it's going to be this scenario is going to be the same, no matter where we're at. We're all going to have to deal with this. But now the difference in this is where Bobby lives at and where I live at is two different climates. Now, in the climate where I'm at down here, we're predominantly humid and hot most of the year, with the exception of probably 3 months out of the year. And with that being the case, with no electricity to run anything, our biggest threat is heat and trying to deal with the heat down here. If you have bodies that have passed on, then you've got the decomposition of bodies in extreme heat that you've got to deal with. That's something that it's going to be a really big issue, and that's where Vic Salve is going to really come in handy for people. And a lot of people don't understand that, but you can take Vic Salve and rub it right underneath your nose right in here. And those of you who have a weak stomachs and stuff like that, it's going to make it a lot easier to actually deal with it in our heat down here. Now, Bobby, where you're at in the weather and in your situation, where you live at up there, how is this going to affect you if we have an EMP happen?
Taking into account the things you've already mentioned as far as water sanitation, trash collection, and all of that being major factors, what we have here in the summer is very hot and humid, very similar to what you have. You guys have a higher humidity. I used to live in Louisiana, so I kind of am familiar with, that portion of the world. What we have up here in the winter, though, especially for the past 5 years, has been very dry winters, very cold winters. 2 years ago, I was remodeling my kitchen in February. Don't ask me why I chose to do it in February, but I was running a tile saw in the garage, a wet saw, and we were cutting tile to put up on the walls. And just the humidity from having a heater in the garage, and the evaporation of the water coming off that tile saw was forming icicles on my garage ceiling. And for 3 days when we were done, I had 2-inch icicles hanging over the entire ceiling, and it's a 2-car garage. So the cold, when it finally gets cold in Kansas these days, it gets very, very cold. We're talking sub 20s. And it'll happen for short bouts for like a week straight. You're just going to get this sort of absolute cold weather, and it's super, super dry. You know, the tips of your fingers can start to split. The tips of your toes can start to split. You get dry skin. Your eyes get very itchy. It's really miserable. You know, it's not like Midwest weather used to be 10 years ago. You know, 10 years ago, you'd get 12 inches of snow 2 or 3 times a year, and it was 33, 34. The snow was wet. The kids could go out and play in it. Today, I have to debate whether I'm letting my kids go out to play in the snow anymore, because it's just so cold and dry that within, 20 minutes, their cheeks are so red and chapped that they're coming back in. So the cold here, I think, is going to be probably the biggest killer, more so than the heat would be here, because a lot of us in this part of the country don't know how to exist without a fireplace or without central heating. Like my house doesn't have a fireplace. When I purchased this house, it was the one thing it did not have I wanted was a fireplace. Everything else it had. So I'm having to figure that issue out myself. But I've got other strategies in place on what to do should it get very cold and I have no electricity. I have wool blankets. I have, solar blankets that I'll put up in the windows to keep the cold out. I just put brand new windows in this house this year. We've done insulation in the attic, redid all of that. But yeah, as far as weather goes, the cold will absolutely sap people, especially folks like you said who are already compromised due to health or age concerns.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the one issue that I think most people don't really take into consideration is the difference in climates, because climate really plays a part. I guess the good side to what you're talking about would be the simple fact that bodies would just be frozen and they wouldn't decompose until spring. You know, that would
Right.
probably
Yeah.
be y'all's saving grace.
In some ways, yeah. It would just depend on the freeze thaw cycle, because like I said, for us it'll hit for a week and then it goes back into the 40s. So I mean, it would be very odd how that would play out. And for your audience members, one thing to consider with this also is that it's one thing to be hungry, it's another thing to be hungry and cold. Hungry and cold is the one combination that every tyrant in the history of the world has used to their advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So that combination of cold and hungry, if you're not prepared to feed yourself and to keep yourself warm, even just from a mental standpoint, your morale breaks down very quickly when you see your children starving, like actually on the ground holding themselves because their body is eating itself, and they're cold because you didn't prepare and buy actual wool blankets. That's when people who want to exert their will on you will understand that you are at the absolute most vulnerable, and they will absolutely come in and offer you warmth and food in exchange for everything.
Yeah, you're right about the tyrants of the world, and that's one thing. When we go into the summer months and stuff like that, I'm gonna just be honest. I really don't ever worry too much about any massive thing happening globally, as far as any type of uh, takeover or anything like that, because anyone who knows anything about military strategies and stuff like that will know that any tyrannical government in the world will always use the cold to their advantage. Uh, I have uncles
Absolutely.
that served during World War One and World War Two that we spoke of. My parents told me about the ones in World War One. I actually spoke to them in World War Two, and they talked about how that the cold was used to the advantage and disadvantage, and not only cold but nighttime. Because when you break the human body down, when it
Yes.
doesn't get the rest that it needs, and if you take people's rest away at night and keep them afraid at night, then you can literally demoralize them and destroy them. And I'm
Yes.
sure with your background, you would probably say that you've seen the same thing.
Absolutely. There's a reason that in modern American military doctrine, we hunt at night. I was Army for 16 years. The modern military hunts at night. Um, sure, the supply lines run continuously, but when the real stuff's going on, it happens, in the dark. Our special operators, they operate in the dark. The SEALs operate in the dark. The Rangers operate in the dark. And it even got to the point in Iraq and Afghanistan in, modern non, asymmetrical warfare where a lot of your raids were taking place at night.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, so with that being said, let's talk about we touched on that's the one thing about talking about the EMP effect. We did touch on a lot of aspects of that for those who have the mental capacity to understand what's actually going on. Not only that, but let's just say, for instance, that uh, it's not an EMP. Let's just say that we have a blackout situation. Let's say that the grid has been overexerted. Too many people's using too much electricity, and rather than burn out the transformers that we don't probably have to replace the ones that we have here, the country will actually, now I say the country, AI is going to do this because humans don't do this anymore. That's one thing people have to understand. AI is running everything. And AI will choose whom it's going to shut down and whom it's going to allow to have power. Now, in my understanding, AI will allow the larger cities to have the power because that's where all
Mhm.
the major corporations are at and stuff like that. They will actually cut the rural areas, and that's why it's so important for rural communities to understand that when they talk about blackouts, they're going to be talking about you, rather than
Mhm.
these suburban type areas. Now, that's not to mean that just because you're in a suburban type setting that you should let your guard down, because if it gets bad enough and you're in a small enough town, even though you're suburban in a small town, they may cut you off too. And when this happens,
Sure.
we're going to go back to the same scenario there. Those that have to
Mhm.
have uh, cooled medical supplies, though the big water pumps that have to run, those that are on community or what do you want to call it, municipal water systems, uh, their water is going to be
Mhm.
compromised. So these are some areas like where I live at down here. Just since Hurricane Katrina, when Hurricane Katrina came through, we signed in under I say we, no, not I, but the powers to be that was above us signed in on Agenda 21 uh, on the 6 coastal counties down here in order to be able to get the funding from the federal government that they needed to be able to rebuild the Gulf Coast area down here. And when they done that, we were put under international code down here. Now, international code wasn't anything new for me because I built in downtown New York and all over the country, and under international code, it was. I was one of the few people here who actually understood it when it came in, and being a contractor, it really wasn't an issue for me. I was pissed off because we were put under it because they want all these permits for this and
Mhm.
permits for that. They want you to register this and register that, and which to be honest, I don't really comply with all the time. But I am a licensed contractor in our area here, and I understand how all this system works only because I've been involved in it for quite some time. But now, with that being said, because we're under Agenda 21 here, we have to abide by specific rules and guidelines now. Now, unlike where Bobby's at, I don't know where you're at, Bobby, whether y'all are under anything like that or if y'all are just free to be whoever you wish to be in Kansas where you're located.
I think Kansas City has some areas that fall under the same kind of jurisdictional regulation you're talking about. I live right outside of Topeka, which is the capital, so I have no doubt Kansas is a member of the Council of Governors. It's one of the, I think, 12 states that are part of the Council of Governors, which was established by Reagan back in the Cold War for continuity of government should, full out war with the Russians take place. But the downside to that is that your states that are part of the Council of Governors operate under completely different rules than most of your other states do. And I think that Agenda 21, which now I think is morphed into what Agenda 2030 now is what they're calling, or Project 2030 now.
Yes.
A lot of the same things apply. See, America never actually formally adopted Agenda 21 because it would have taken an act of the Senate to do so because it's technically a foreign treaty. And at the time, the Senate didn't adopt it. But local municipalities, again, don't have to fall under those rules. Local municipalities can adopt Agenda 21 all day long. And so the powers that be within the federal government that wanted it started to focus at local and state levels. And that's why there's been such a push since the 80s to take over entire sections of states with progressive politicians, because then they can implement 21 or 30 any way they want because it's not federal. It's not bound by federal law anymore. And I do believe that Kansas City, at least in part, is bound by that. I would like to say that Topeka probably is, and Wichita probably is as well.
Yeah, so that's one thing when we talk about homesteaders, that they should really do their homework if they're looking at a place to live in the country, because they need to look at these council of states and stuff like that and see just who is involved and what and where would be classified a better place to live. You know, I mean, because there's some places like people go, I want to live. Yeah, I would love to live next to Deepsouth Homestead. Well, you might and you might not. I mean, you know, because we're under a total different set of rules down here than
Right.
you know. I mean, even though we're in Mississippi, I can go 3 hours north of me, and I'm in the same state, and I fall under a total different group of rules. You know, I mean, everything's different.
Right.
So people have to really do their homework when it comes to looking for a specific place to call home. You know, and then we
Sure.
have you know, we can talk a little bit about this, and a lot of people's going to say, "Oh no, Danny just put his tinfoil hat on." Well, look, I was born with one on, I think. You know, weather manipulation is something that our enemy knows probably better than we know. And the thing about it is all you've got to do is watch the weather patterns coming in on the West Coast. And we talk about weather manipulation being a bad thing. The truth of the matter is, I'm going to be honest with you, the information I get from different facilities is that we're combating a lot of times with weather manipulation that's being sent in on the West Coast in order to prevent it from being any worse on our nation than what it already is. We're combating it with weather manipulation, trying to protect ourselves more so than we are trying to do something to ourselves, because our enemy is all out about manipulating our weather. And for most people, they don't even get this concept. And I mean, where you're at, Bobby, you're higher up in there. You're parallel. You're at 38, 35 to 38.
Something like that. Yeah.
So you're parallel. The weather's going to affect you before it does me. Anything that comes in on that East Coast that West Coast, you're kind of what I call one of the battleground states between the frigid cold from the north and the heat from the south. And I also call it the bread belt of the country up through there. You know, we talk about Nebraska and Kansas and all down through there. Our enemy loves to destroy that area with weather.
Yes. Yes. I absolutely agree. Yeah, I've got a tinfoil hat too on this one. I've been in a military tent in a foreign country before, in a tactical command center, where I heard a full bird colonel get on the radio and say, "Initiate spray." And on the screens, you saw a C-130 start circling in a spiral formation, and it's spraying out the back, because whatever it's spraying, you know, you call it whatever, chemtrails or, you know, boron or whatever you want to think it is, whatever it is, enhances ground penetrating radar. It allows for FLIR and ground penetrating radar to get clearer images at higher altitudes, so our spy planes and our snooping planes can be at higher altitudes and avoid missile canopy, essentially. I have no doubt that right now, what most conspiracy theorists term as chemtrails is actually an attempt by us to reflect solar radiation, because we are now in the grand solar cycle. The radiation this year was horrible for most people when it came to gardening. It was for me. And most people I know did not have a good year gardening, no matter how much work they put into it. And so when you have that weather bombardment coming in from the West Coast and now from the North, because we know that China pretty much owns Canada at this point. Canadian law now allows for Chinese soldiers to be garrisoned anywhere in the country where a Chinese company holds a significant financial stake. So if a company over there, if China owns 10% of their stock, they can put soldiers there. That's how Canadian law works right now. So you have threats from the north and the west right now, which follows, of course, the Gulf Stream and the prevailing weather patterns. And yeah, the crops this year have done very poorly. And this isn't the first year. And we're in a sustained level of multi-year drought here in the Midwest. And every time you think that the water table comes up just enough to pull us out of that drought, bam, we have another summer where nothing happens. And more consequently, we have a winter where nothing happens. We have, like I said, it's so cold here now. The last 3 or 4 years, we've gotten maybe 1/8 of an inch of snow twice, and it was just a light powder, and it blew away before it even melted. That's not normal. That's not natural. That isn't the way snowfall works in the Midwest. Even if you take into account the 5 and 20-year cycles of cold and what the retards on the left call global warming, when you take that natural cycle into account, that's still not what happens. So when you have the Midwest not getting enough annual precipitation already, and then you have weak winters where the flies and the mosquitoes and the ticks and the fleas aren't dying, for one, and then two, you're not getting that seasonal snowfall that backs up your annual rainfall. You get drought, and the drought just continues and continues and continues and continues. And I would be willing to bet a fat paycheck that is not naturally occurring.
Yes. Lots of people, I get this on my channel all the time talking about, I can't believe you're such a wackadoodle believing that man can actually manipulate the weather. God's in control of the weather. And I am as biblical as anyone else out there. But let me tell you something. I don't know that God gives a flip about the weather. You know what I'm saying? And that may sound, Bobby, that may sound totally off the wall, but I don't think that's really high on his radar. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Come a time where he will give this word mind. Why is it so hard to believe that means he withholds his grace? Why is that so hard to believe that he says, you know what? You don't want to believe in me anymore. You've gone after Moloch. You're sacrificing your children. I'm out for a while. Enjoy the consequences of your
yes.
behavior, the same way he did with the Israelites. The people who think God's in control, therefore this can't happen, have never read their Bible, because there is more than 30 dozen episodes or examples in the Old Testament alone of when God's like, fine. And he just sat back and let the Canaanites and the Hittites and whatever ITE clan of people come in and absolutely ransack the place. And there were times there was droughts. There was times there was famines. God being in control could also mean that he decides not to play.
That is the one thing right there that I think more people that classify themselves in the quote unquote Christian realm seem to miss, is the simple fact that God would never allow anything like this to happen. What they forget is God is just. And when you have a just being, there is a recompense for everything. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's if you do this, then there is a reward for that, whether it be good or whether it be bad. I mean, like you said, there's some 30-something odd examples throughout a dozen examples throughout the Bible there where he said, he even gives a parable of the seed sower throwing seeds on good ground. Some of it lands on bad ground. Some of it lands on stony ground, and they all pop up in under different circumstances. And I think as a human race, based on what we're facing in the world today, we've got to get a grip on this and quit thinking that just because we serve a God that he's going to not allow certain things to happen, because the innocent, they die right with the guilty. You know, I mean, you've been in war. You've seen you've seen the backgrounds of war and what goes on behind the scenes and stuff like that. The people that were supposedly Christian people, they did not suffer because everybody else did suffer. If there's no water, there's no water. If there's no food, there's no food. I mean, would you agree with that, Bobby?
I would. The Bible also says that the rain falls upon the ground of the righteous as much as the unrighteous. It's indiscriminate. And for anyone who thinks that God's in control, he won't let that happen. What do you call a hydroelectric dam? Mankind can dam up rivers. They can dry up entire lakes. Why can't they manipulate the weather? What's the difference?
Exactly. Yeah, as a prime example, we put a link up to a weather machine in Oregon that was, or Washington, should I say, that was going to be, they had city council meetings on this and all that kind of stuff. We put that link up and it was pulled down. You know, they took it away from, I even put it on Patreon. They took it off of Patreon. They took it off of everything because I guess they didn't want the whole United States to know that they were having town meetings on this where they were going to implement all this stuff out there. And of course, now my understanding is the vote failed to be able to do it there. And I hope that I'm accurate about that. But the bottom line is this: when it comes to surviving, now your survival skills are different than my survival skills. I spent 11 years, you know, studying survival, living in the woods and different things like that in my climate where I'm at. You've been under lots of different situations where you're at. There's different foods here that, and I'm by no wise, let me put it to you this way, I am by no wise a total expert on any of this. You know, I mean, I literally learn every day of my life. One thing I learned in survival, you never quit learning. You're always learning because the environment is always changing. And you've got to understand that if you think you know it all, you're the first one who just failed. You know, and that where you're at, Bobby, and this is, I'm going to bring this back home to what we were talking about a while ago. This is the one reason I say that if any tyrannical government wanted to take over the United States or anything like this, they would do it in the winter months, because the winter months, there is no food. People say, well, I'll just go wild foraging in the woods. Not during the winter, you won't. You know, there are a few things in the winter that's available out there, but they're not life-sustaining. I mean, where you live at in Kansas, Bobby, what would it be like if you was going to go foraging in the winter months?
First, you'd have to have a commanding knowledge of your local flora. You'd have to understand what plants grow, and you'd have to understand that during a freezing cold portion, very few things are leafing. Nothing's flowering. I mean, what are you going to do? Dig for roots? Eat bark? I mean, unless you knew what you were going to do, what you had growing regionally and what was available during that particular portion of the seasons, it would be horrible for you. You're going to starve if you think you're just going to go out and forage. That's no different than the folks who are like, oh, if a nuke goes off, I'm just going to head to the mountains, or I'm going to go down to the lake. Okay, first off, if you're going to the lake, so is every damn buddy else. For one thing, all the idiots are going to flock to the big bodies of water. And then you're going to have these little towns pop up, little tent cities, and everyone's going to be shanking each other in the middle of the night for what they have for a few scraps. And then the guys, oh, I'm just going to go to the mountains. Really? When's the last time you tried to climb up a 100-foot incline? Go for it, buddy. Oh man, yeah, that stuff, that mentality, I'm just going to go do this. Well, that's pretty fatalistic, man. And that's how you're going to die, period. Which is why one of the things most preppers never do is go out and learn bushcraft skills. You know, I have some friends here in Kansas. Blackthorn USA has one of the best bushcraft schools in the Midwest. Like, he's friends with folks like Dave Canterbury and all the really big, he's part of the Trailblazers groups and all that kind of stuff. If you have the money and the time, you should be going to those schools, and learning some basic stuff if you've never done it. He has classes where you can go out there with just a knife. And then there's classes where you go out with nothing, and he teaches you what to do in your local. And I'm sure down where you live, there are schools out there, or at least individuals who are knowledgeable on your local flora and fauna who would be able to pass that knowledge on. But man, if you're going to forage in the winter, good luck. I mean, your poop's going to hurt coming out.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, you always want to make sure you have some stool softeners. That's for sure, especially if you stocked up on MREs. But you know, one of the most eye-opening situations that I ever experienced in my life when I was pulled away and I was put climbing 1,000 foot up the side of a mountain in zero weather, and I'm from the South. We have heavy humidity here. And when you took me to a high elevation and you put me under that temperature and I had to climb 1,000 feet up the side of a mountain, my lungs like to froze. I mean, literally, I couldn't breathe. My legs were getting weak and shaking and all this kind of stuff. And that's the point I'm trying to make. People like Bobby said, we're going to run to the mountains. Really? How is your body going to, altitude and everything will affect your human body more than you ever dreamed it was. When that air gets light, the higher you go and gets colder, and you can't get a breath because your lungs can't expand like they need to, and then on top of that, you're not used to that type of cold, which is a dry cold, which will freeze you before you know you're froze. Is like Bobby was talking about
Yes.
a while ago. Your fingertips will start splitting, your toes will split because of a dry, arid. I mean, let's put it this way: where I live at, I can set an igloo cooler outside at night, and when I wake up in the morning, a dry one, and when I wake up in the morning, it's got water in it. I can go up north, and I can put an igloo cooler outside that's got water in it, and when I get up in the morning, it's dry. And most people don't understand the actual scenario of how the body functions under those conditions. That's why the United States military, when they pull a guy from a particular area when he joins the military, they send him to the exact opposite of what he's used to so that they can condition his body, And I know you've seen this and I know you've experienced this. When you've been pulled out of your element and you've sent somewhere into a total different climate, you take, what is it, Uzbekistan or one of those places like that where we're talking 50 below zero, temperatures, and these people are quite commonly used to it. They can ramble around out there in that stuff and do just fine. But you take an old boy up in the United States and put him in that climate in those mountainous regions in there, and he's fighting just to keep his own self alive.
Oh, sure. And even with the military, the doctrine today is you're still supposed to give soldiers and Marines 2 weeks of acclimation period once they're in country. During the War on Terror, they were putting all of us into places like Fort Irwin, California, Fort Bliss, Texas, all these training centers that were down in the South because it mimicked as closely as possible the weather over in Iraq and in parts of Afghanistan. But once you got into theater, the regulations still read you're supposed to give these guys 2 weeks to get used to it, even over there after they've been training at Fort Bliss or at NTC or someplace like that. Now, you didn't always get it, but I mean, that was still the regulation because at the heart of it, they realized there's an acclimation period to all of this. And Danny, let's not forget the number one thing that actually factors into all of this, and that's your physical condition.
Yes.
These preppers, these bean stackers, as I call them, they're 300 pounds. They spend most of their time behind their keyboard arguing over elections. They don't do anything. They're spending more time arguing about popularity contests and about, oh, well, this didn't go my way, and oh, look out, the World Economic Forum and all this stuff. And they have a plate carrier that weighs 50 pounds. They have a bug out bag that weighs 45 pounds. They have a rifle and a chest rig that together weigh 30 pounds. They've never put it all on together. And I'm supposed to believe you're just going to throw that shit on and you're going to walk into the mountains? Bro.
Right. Yeah,
Come on.
Exactly. That was my whole point about what happened to me when I was thrown up, had to climb 1,000 foot up the side of a mountain when, with gear on, and you're physically just, you can't do it. And that was probably the biggest eye opener that I ever had, because at that point I thought I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, just like a lot of these people are. And And when you get these people like you talking about there that sit behind a computer keyboard all day long, uh, talking, well, I'm a prepper. Well, you might be a prepper, but who did you prep for? Did you prep for yourself, or did you prep for the
Right.
dude who's going to come take it from you because you physically can't keep it?
Right. Right. At that point, you're just a collector, man. You're nothing but a glorified milsim hoarder. That's all
Yeah.
you are. You have all the stuff you can put on to look like you were part of some Navy SEAL team and back in the in 2010, but you don't know how to use any of it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's you know when Wanda and I, when we sit down and we start talking about different scenarios, and I do this to her every so often. If we're in town or something other, I'll look at her and say, like if we get gas or something other, service station, I'll look at her and say, oh no, an EMP just happened or something. I said, what do we do? I want to see her
Mhm.
response. We keep a quilt in the
Sure.
back seat of my truck. Of course, I always have a weapon on me. And we have it designed that way on purpose. I told her, I said, this truck means absolutely nothing to me. We're going to grab the quilt. We're going to grab a few supplies that we have there in the truck we keep with us at all times. And it's a 15-mile trek to my house from where we live in town at. It's all rural. There's very few people who travel these roads on a regular basis. We've got 2 creeks to cross. I know every piece of property from my house to the city where we do all of our shopping at like the back of my hand.
Sure.
I purposely every so often take my vehicles and just drive into certain areas and go back into roads and stuff like that and look and see how they've grown up, who lives in there, what kind of people's in specific areas, so that if I have to get home, I know which roads to avoid. I know which ways are going to be the safest way for me to get home. If I have to
Right.
spend the night, being I'm at my age, 15 miles used to I could have ran that, but now that I'm at 62 years old, I've got a bum knee. It may take me over a day to walk home, because of my condition. And
Sure.
I've got places I've already picked out where we'll spend the night because of its ruralness, and where I know there's a water location there. I know there's a food source there if I need to catch a fish to eat or whatever. I know all this stuff in the back of my mind. And where you live at, if you have to run into a big city to get anything and something should happen while you're in there, you're like me, you're EMP protected. Uh, we can still drive home, and here comes the big one right
Oh,
here. This is the big scenario here. People keep throwing back at me. Well, you got a vehicle that's driving. That's going to make you I'm going to make you a target out there. All I can say is, don't get in my way. Yeah, that's. I mean, do you feel the same way? I mean,
the worst attitude. That is the worst attitude. Walking on the side of the road is going to make you a target. You might
yes.
as well be a fast target. What the hell, man? No,
Yeah.
again, these people, and forgive my crassness, but this is people subscribe to what I call prepper porn. It's the stuff that keeps them awake at night. It keeps them scared, and it makes them exhilarated because we all like to be scared, right? It's why we watch scary movies and why we go to theme parks. I mean, people like to be scared. I get it, but these people almost seem to operate under this cloud of fear. And what I personally believe it has more to do with than anything is it justifies inaction. If I'm fighting the Illuminati or the World Economic Forum or the deep state, that is an enemy that is so damn big, little old Bobby Spags can't do anything about it. So why try? I'm just going to stack some beans in my basement. I'm going to buy a single rifle, never shoot it because I want all that ammo for the end of the world, and have no clue what's going to happen. And that's why I hate the prepper porn. It's why I hate almost every show that was ever shoved on TV from like 2004 until now about preppers and prepping and all this stuff. It's stupid. And it's designed to keep you in fear, and it's designed to keep you inactive. You have to shed the mentality of fear. Understand that your strength doesn't just come from you, and you got to pick your head up, look forward, and become a damn lion and move forward. That's what you have to do. And you're not going to do it if you're worried about whether or not having a car makes you a target. Bro, why are you carrying a gun? I mean, if you're that
Exactly.
worried, carry a gun, you know?
Yeah, that was one thing we were talking about. One thing I was talking about. I told her, I said, look, you know, um, if and when this ever happens, I told her, I said, all I want you to do is just lay down in the passenger seat and let me get me home. I said, because I'm going to pull my weapon out. I'm coming home. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I am not stopping for nothing. And when I get home, everybody goes, yeah, but
Right.
dude, you got a vehicle that runs in there that you're going to be a target for this. When I come home and flips that key off on that vehicle, it'll probably never crank again until everything's normal or to the new normal,
Yep.
because I have no need to. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that EMP shield I bought to go on that truck did what I bought it to do. It was to get me home. That's it.
Yes. Yep. Because when's the
So
last time you walked 15 miles, right? This is
Yep.
going to happen to you while you're at Walmart, man. It's not going to happen
Oh
to you while
yeah.
unless you're one of those people who never leaves the house. This is likely to happen when you've gone to the post office or when you've gone to fill your truck up. God, can you imagine being stuck at a gas station when an EMP goes off? Can you imagine if it's just a blackout and the cars are still running? That gas station, everyone's going to flock to it. And we're going to see what we saw this year with retards putting Visqueen in the bed of their truck and filling up a whole bed with gas and driving off with that stuff sloshing everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to be able to turn the key and get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. And I want to have a vehicle strong enough to push your rice grinder out of the way.
Yeah, that's why I have a quad cab 4-wheel drive. And I told her, I said, that's why I don't like running around in little tiny vehicles all the time. Everybody goes, yeah, but that thing's a big gas guzzler. But that gas guzzler may get me home. It's a whole lot easier from here to town is a 15-minute trip for me in my vehicle. If I have to walk it, I'm talking about a day to day and a half. On top of that, I'm going to be physically exhausted from walking because of my knee. And then if I have an encounter with someone, then I've got to deal with that on a physical issue, hand-to-hand combat or whatever I may have to deal with there, which is going to only further wear my physical system out. And there's not the time to sit and eat full-course meals and stuff like this. The protein levels in our body, the calorie levels in our body are going to be dropping. We're going to be tired because we didn't sleep good because we were in an element that we weren't conducive to our soft, comfy bed at night. If we had to spend the night somewhere, we had to worry with insects bothering us throughout the night. We lost sleep, and the next day we're not going to be at our best physical condition to be able to do what we need to do. And not only that, everybody else is going to be doing the same thing. And if they're thirsty, if they're hungry, and they think you have something, like you was talking about a while ago, everybody's going to be shanking everybody just to be able to survive.
Yep.
I would whole lot rather be in my vehicle doing something than I had on foot.
Yes, absolutely. Plus, you can only carry so much on foot, too. I mean,
Right.
like you might have a few water jugs in your vehicle. You might have an extra 1-gallon thing of gas in your vehicle. Those are commodities and valuable items you'll have to leave behind if you have to get out on foot. And what if your kid's less than 2 years old? Your kid's with you. What are you gonna do? You're gonna throw your little bug out bag on that you have in your car that you've never opened, at least haven't opened since you bought the last item back in 2008 when Obama had you scared? What are you gonna do? You're gonna hold the kid with the backpack and then walk 15 miles home? Come on, guys. You got to think in cyclical layers. You got to think in concentric circles. You got to stop thinking about what am I going to do right here, right now. You got to start thinking, okay, if this happens, what are my multiple circles of actions I can take to mitigate as many problems as possible? And then I have backups to that. And then I have backups to that. And then I have backups in case this one fails and that one fails. Or keep whining about 2022. Like it's gonna matter.
Like it's gonna matter. That's true. And then, like we talked about a while ago, it's winter time. The one thing that most people never take into consideration, they go, well, I got food and water to back up for this and that. Well, great. Food and water is great. Food you can live without 3 weeks. Water you can live without 3 days. But when it comes to staying warm, you got about 3 hours. If your body can't keep its inner core temperature where it needs to be at, you will not survive. I mean, and if you, like Bobby said, like if you've got a little one with you, then not only do you have to worry about your ability to survive and stay warm, you've got to worry about that child. And if you can't make it, and then you
Right.
have a little child left off out there by itself in the wild, that should open your eyes. So, guys,
Sure.
be conscientious about the decisions you're making. At least use some of what you have periodically. I take my pistol out periodically, and I use that gun. Because the worst thing you can have in your possession is a firearm that you have no ability to know how to use, and know how it fires or how it works or where it hits when you aim at it, or anything about that weapon. You can. It would be better that you not carry a weapon than that you carry one that you have no ability to know how to use it. Would you agree with that, Bobby?
100%. 100%. Look, I am more pro-gun than the Second Amendment. Okay, the Second Amendment doesn't go far enough in my mind. I am the guy who believes that I should be able to have a quad-barrel 50 caliber anti-aircraft gun in my backyard if I want to, and unless I actually break the law or hurt somebody with it, you all have nothing to say about it. That's my opinion on guns. I think by the time you're 14, you should be able to carry a gun in society if your parents think you're responsible enough. 13, 12, whatever. But if you don't know what you're doing, you are literally going to kill people and probably kill yourself. Period. End of story. A handgun, your best barrels are what, 3 inches long.
Yeah.
You move that a quarter of an inch from the distance from you to your body, that translates into feet when you're talking 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet away. That bullet's going to go in places you have no clue. It's not like the movies where you just point. The gun doesn't bounce. It's just like pop, 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 pop. Here's a hint, guys. Movie guns are 25 caliber weapons. They're real guns that shoot 25 caliber blanks. You can actually buy movie guns. You used to be able to buy them in Shotgun News all the time. 25 caliber AK-47s or M16s, whatever. But it's a 25 caliber gun that shoots a blank, which is why every time you see a movie person shooting a big handgun, it goes plip, 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 and barely moves. It's not like that in real life. And if you if you have carpal tunnel and you're rocking a 40 Smith & Wesson, you're going to hate life, period. End of story. That's a high pressure. And I carry 40 caliber. Or I carry 9mm. I carry both. And I have carpal tunnel. And as my carpal tunnel gets worse, the more and more I carry 9mm, because quite frankly, it does every bit as good, regardless of what anyone tells you. And it doesn't beat the hell out of your wrists when you shoot it.
Yes.
When I went to the concealed carry class years ago, I was watching these, no offense, little girls going up there to take their class, those 18, 19-year-old skinny little things, walking up there with dad's 1911, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And then I watched these old dudes who finally got the chance to carry a gun legally in Kansas walk up there with their 8-shot 22. Still couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. I'm like, if you're going to carry a gun in society, and if you want to keep the regulators and the liberals and the progressives out of your business, get good with that gun. Because if you shoot the wrong person, if you shoot yourself in the leg, that's going to make the news, and you're going to look stupid, and you're going to be the person that gets it banned for the rest of us, guaranteed.
Yeah, you become the poster child for it. Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when I took Wanda to get her concealed.
I know I'm not supposed to say things like that.
No. You're accurate. But when I took Wanda to get her concealed carry, the guy that was teaching the class, he was really nervous for me being in the room. He said, I feel like you should be teaching this and not me, And I told him, I said, no, don't worry about it. I said, just go ahead and do what you need to do. I said, I'm here for her mainly. And when we got down to the range down there, it was just amazing. He told me, he said, do you want to fire a weapon? And I told him, I said, sure. I'll go first. And I said, but I didn't bring a weapon with me. He said, well, you can use my 9mm. And I told him, I said, well, under one condition. I get one shot first, just one to see what the gun does and how it operates, And he said, okay, that's fair, So I walked out there and to the range, and I picked the weapon up, and I was like, bam, I shot, and I was like, okay, it's shooting a little bit to the left and down just a touch. And I popped the clip out in my hand, and of course, like holding one hand up in each direction, he's like, okay, magazine, gun, go. And I pop it in there. I'm like, that fast, and kind of like shocked him real quick, because I unloaded that gun in just a split second. And they've got those 4 little circles there, and I said, you can go check it. I said, it doesn't make me any difference what it did, but because it's not my gun. He come back over there and he goes, well, he said, you hit the edge of the ring on 2 of the shots. And I'm thinking, I shot that bad? He goes, oh, no, all of them was in the circles. He said, you just hit the ring on 2 of them. He said, it was totally amazing, you know.
Yep. I freaked out my instructor. The way it was, you were supposed to shoot like 5 rounds at like 2 feet. Then there was another 5 rounds at like 5 feet. Then there was a 10 rounder at like 20 feet. And that's all you had to do for Kansas concealed carry. I might not have that exact, but it was something like that. And the instructor goes, all right, everyone load. And it was me and like 3 or 4 other people in a line. All right, everyone, take your time and shoot your first 5 rounds. Shoot for center mass. And of course, I kind of look over and everyone's like doing all this.
Yep.
So I just went, bam, 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 5 rounds, all right here on the target, like quarter size. And he looked at me and he goes, that's not center mass. I said, yeah, but he's not getting back up. So then they moved us back. I just kept doing it. Even with the 10 rounder at 20 feet, I was just like, bam, 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 just put it all in a, circle that big right on the head. And he's like, well, you can't shoot like that in real life. I'm like, bet that. I certainly can.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, it's yeah, I today really the video is about surviving what's coming. And guys, Bobby and I have talked about things that were not what you were expecting to hear. We talked about reality today. We didn't talk about a bag of beans. We didn't talk about a bag of rice. We didn't talk about, what we're going to do and who we're going to find and all this kind of stuff. And, I'm bugged out. I'm headed to this and that. We didn't hit all the scenarios that everybody else talks about. Bobby and I talked about reality today. The things that you will face.
Items for your bug out bag.
Yeah. and we, do I have a bug out bag? No. I have a bug in bag with me. Now, I don't know what Bobby may have a bug out bag with him, but I have a bug in bag with me. What about you, Bobby? Is yours a bug out or bug in?
It's both. I mean, honestly, I have 2 bags. I have an everyday carry bag that I take anywhere I go. So when I leave my house, it's a bag. It's much smaller. It's not military looking. It doesn't have molly. It's not camouflage. It's not tan. It's not OD green. It's a brown leather bag that looks like a purse almost. And it's got enough in there to get me home. And then I have my main bag here. And it's a bag that is, I built it to be modular. I can take pouches off and add pouches depending on what I'm doing. So it's really kind of ambidextrous. I can make it whatever I want it to be.
I hear you. But today, I hope that
no one knows if they're going to bug in or out. You don't know what the scenario is.
This is true. Where I live at, I've got 7,000 acres behind me back here that's just wilderness. And I have purposely over the years of my life of living here, over the 30 years, I've got to know this land like the back of my hand. And even though I don't own it, back when it was where people could go in and out of there, I was in there. I was always in there.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much know my total surroundings here. And if I'm way away, I'm probably not going to be bugging in, because I'm probably, yeah, and I think Bobby would agree with this. If you're like way away, if I'm hundreds of miles away from my home, the fact of me getting to my home is not going to happen real quick. So it's going to be more of a situation where I'm going to be trying to find a place of security till summertime comes, if you get what I'm talking about, yes. Because it's going to happen in the winter. And let me tell you how, Bobby, I know it's going to happen in the winter. It's in the Bible that it's going to happen in the winter. Because what does it say in the scripture? And I think this is one of the biggest clues we could have got. Pray that your flight not be in the winter time. Because I think that God gave us that clue because he knew how tyrannical governments would work. They would do it in the winter. And so my bug out bag or bug in bag or whatever I want to call it, is to get me to a place of safety that I can survive at till I can get where I can get home. Because,
Yes.
I mean, do you agree with that, Bobby? Is that how you think on your, is that how your thinking scale
Yep.
works also?
Absolutely. In fact, the term bug out bag is just cliche. We use it because everyone does and people know what you're talking about with it, but really all it is a tool bag. It just has a different set of tools.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, so guys, today, I hope that what Bobby and I have talked about, even though it sounded tinfoil hattish in some areas and humorous in some areas, and some of them could have been gory, depending on what type of mentality you have. It didn't bother me, and I know it didn't bother Bobby. But some of y'all have an issue with talking about, well, certain people's going to die. Does that mean I'm not going to live, or does that? Or I have to take this kind of medication, or I have to do this, or look, guys, work out your own details. That's all I can tell you. I can't live your life for you. To be honest with you, there's no guarantees I'm going to make it because I don't know what I'll run into. I don't know what type of disease I'll come across that maybe my body's not acclimated to it. I don't know what kind of situation I'll come across that my body's not acclimated to. All I know is I know what I can do. I know my limitations, and I know my experience in my field of experience. And that's what I would. Bobby made a great analogy a while ago. People sitting behind the laptop or a computer, sitting there in their armchair. That I call them Cheeto eaters. I mean, they're sitting in their big armchair eating Cheetos and leaving red stains on the keyboard all the time. And I this type of and they have all the knowledge in the world because why?
Flies constantly landed on their mouth.
Yeah, and they have all the knowledge in the world because how I know they read about it. They saw a movie with it in there, so they know what to do. And
right.
I was and I'm fixing to get off here. When I was teaching,
did you see that episode of The Walking Dead?
Yes, on the Night of the Living Dead. Did y'all see this when that happened? What those dudes did? One time when I was teaching survival, I had a young lady who come up to me and she said, Mr. Danny, she said, oh my gosh, she said, I just read 1 second after I finished The Patriot, which are books I always told people to read because I thought they were good educational books. The Patriot I like because it changes with the times. And I told him, I said, look, that's perfectly fine that you've done all this homework that I gave you. I said, but have you put foot to the ground? I said, because knowledge is great, but until you put foot to the ground and you actually practice what you've learned, it is as good to you as muddy water without a way to filter it and you're thirsty. I said, that, my friend, I said, get out there and make it happen and then come talk to me. And
yes,
you talk
be a doer, become a lion. Don't be a sheep.
Don't be a sheep. That's it. Do not be a sheep. And guys, do yourself a favor. If you don't want to put bags in your vehicles and stuff like that, and you don't want to carry something with you, do yourself a favor. At least go to Walmart or somewhere and get you some straws that purify water, and keep them in a glove box. Because if you've got children and you've got to get home, the first thing any kid, I don't care who you are, it's happened to me, it's happened to everybody I ever know. The first thing that happens when kids get out and they have to start walking or they have to start doing something, I'm thirsty or I'm hungry, and guys, get yourself some water purification straws, if nothing else. Get you some tablets, get something other that's light, easy to carry, so that you at least stand a chance to get home. If you're going to be so cheap that you're not going to get you an EMP protector for your vehicle or something other like that, then at least do yourself a favor and go spend $20 on something other like that, at least so you have water to drink to get home. So, guys, we've been on here today with Bobby from Spags Unfiltered. Bobby has a huge background of knowledge because of the life that he's lived and the things that he's been involved in. I want to invite y'all to go over to Spags Unfiltered. Check out his YouTube channel. He says you're building a web page. Am I correct about that, Bob? You're building a different...
Yeah, spagsunfiltered.com will come out at some point. It's just not a huge priority for me yet. I still have tomatoes to pick, but I'll get to it probably over the winter months and get it fleshed out.
Okay, and also I want to invite everyone who listens to this to go over to freesteading.com. This is a platform that
Yes.
Bobby and I both are on. I think that this is going to be the new future for homesteaders and those who are not homesteaders, those who are just trying to survive. It would be wise to you if you would go over to this platform. It's in the process of being built right now. I think the app will probably be up in a few weeks or so. We should have the app up, Bobby, where people can.
I'm hoping so. Yeah, I'm hoping so. I know that the app is under development, but yeah, I really do hope it comes out pretty quick.
And guys, I think that once you get over there and see what's available on freesteading.com, that you're going to be blown away. It's going to be better than Facebook ever thought about being. It's going to be better than YouTube ever thought about being. Guys, this is going to be the future of information. It's going to be the information highway of the future for your ability to be able to survive whatever is coming. And one of the great things about this site, and I may let Bobby expound on this a little bit before we get off of here, is the simple fact of how many different knowledgeable people are going to be there with accurate knowledge, not Google knowledge.
Right. Yes. No,
Um,
you're absolutely right about that. I mean, I mean, you're a community leader there, and you guys have a great wealth of knowledge. Billy from Perma Pastures is a community leader. He's got a wealth of knowledge. I'm probably one of the smaller channels who's a community leader there. But we've got, David the Good, Pinball Prepper, a whole bunch of them, a whole bunch of folks who come from different backgrounds within this greater community, right? And the idea is to have the preppers, the homesteaders, the bushcrafter, all of them, where everyone can exchange ideas in a non-toxic forum, in a free speech platform. We're not going to have, things hiding what you say, saying click here to understand what misinformation could be. None of that's happening. And the cool thing is you're going to have direct access to us. If you friend Danny or me or Billy or Tag from Life Done Free or Data from Getting Deep with Data, any of them, Grumpy Acres Farm, Hacks for the Homestead, any of them, you can message them and ask them questions. And when they're done picking their sweet peas for the day and they have time, they'll pull their phone out and answer your question. It's something that YouTube won't let you do unless you're on a live chat. And even there, you can't really source people on a live chat on YouTube. It's
right.
not going to have the censorship of Bookface or Twitter Pated or Instabam or Tactic or any of that stupid stuff. So what are you doing still supporting the enemy? Get over to freesteading.com and be part of the solution.
Amen, brother. I believe that. That's why I am part of it, and I am looking forward to the growth of this. And guys, get over to freesteading.com and become a member. And the great thing about this is it's also broken down into states. You can also, whatever state you live in, you can find local people in your area that live under the same situations and circumstances that you live under, so you don't have to feel like you're alone wherever you live at. Right, Bobby?
100%, guys. And listen when we tell you that it's going to be a long, dry, cold winter. It's going to be a very hungry and cold winter. The lone wolf mentality is going to get you killed. Find like-minded people. Find people you can rely on. Find people who can rely on you and build community. Without community, we die. Period.
Yes, I did a video called 165 Hours years ago. You can only stay awake so many hours and protect what you have if you're alone. At some point, I mean, even the Navy SEALs and the
Yes.
Special Forces are taught these specific things. You have to have, I think, what is it, 11 to 15 men it takes to actually successfully hold something, because that way there's enough people there to get enough rest in order for everything to function like it needs to function. And guys, that's what's going to be great about freesteading.com is this type of information will be there, and there will be people who have lived some of these things. They can tell you firsthand, and they're not going to sugarcoat something for you. That's one thing I'm loving about this. If you want an honest opinion, they're going to look at you. They're not going to worry whether it bothers your feelings or not. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're going to look at you and give you the honest to God truth, whether it hurts your feelings or whether it don't hurt your feelings. That's what I'm loving about this. If I want the
Yeah.
cold hard truth about something, I'm gonna send Bobby a message and I'm gonna say, Bobby, you've been in this situation before. Give me the cold hard truth about it, and Bobby's gonna give me the unfiltered side of Bobby that's gonna say, hey man, look, if you don't do this, you're going to die. And that's what I want. And
You're gonna die.
yep.
Yep.
And that's the thing that
Hey, look, folks, I could sugarcoat it. I could use really pretty language. I could never cuss, and I could be in a spirit of nothing but worship all the time, and you will learn nothing from me that you wouldn't get from your preacher already. So come to me if you want real stuff. Come to Danny if you want real stuff. Billy, Tag, all of us. If you want real stuff, we're going to talk to you real. And you might get offended. But honestly, being offended means your brain's working in ways it probably hasn't yet. And then, like I was told recently, then you can determine whether you were actually offended or whether someone just made you uncomfortable, and you can adjust.
Yeah, that's the reason I went ahead and put my first video up over at freesteading.com. And I put that first video up just telling people how I felt about, everything. You'll either love me or you'll hate me. That's the way I'm going to look at it.
Yes.
I wanted to get off on the right foot over there. And this is the way it'll be. And I'm pretty sure Bobby and them is going to be the same way. We want honesty. We want sincerity. We're not there to sugarcoat anything for you. We're there to tell you the honest to goodness truth. I mean, one thing about those of you who served in the military or anything like that, they don't send you out into combat without first at least telling you what can happen to you. And
Yeah.
that's you need that knowledge, and that's what you'll get at freesteading.com. Bobby, thank you today, my friend, for spending this time with me, and thank you for just being honest. Thank you for being unfiltered with us today.
Thank you, Danny, for having me. It's always a pleasure when I talk to you or Wanda. True friends.
All right. Yes, my friend. So, guys, we're going to jump off of here, and I encourage y'all once again, go check out freesteading.com and go check out Spags Unfiltered. If you're not subscribed to him, go ahead and subscribe to him and show you support over there. And if you're not subscribed to us, I don't know why you're listening to this to start with. If you're not, but you should be. And
Yeah.
maybe you just found us, or maybe this is just a podcast out there, because I'm probably going to put it in 2 or 3 different areas. And, if it's a podcast out there and you're not subscribed, you don't watch YouTube, come over to YouTube and find both of us, and then go over to freesteading.com and become a part of that. And let's build all this up, guys. Let's build freesteading.com up to the new platform out there for everybody who's looking for the truth. Thank you, guys, from Deep South Homestead.